Welcome to the Sable Singularity, a space where storytelling, technology, games, and systems collide on purpose. This is where I build out loud, learn in public, and document the messy, magical process of becoming. If you're a creative, a builder, a gamer, or just a curious mind, pull up a chair or a rocket ship. Let's surf the singularity together. Hey y'all, this is Kobe R. Rice, storyteller, game designer, full stack engineer, and tech founder, and welcome to Log 2 of the Sable Singularity podcast. So today's episode is going to be about goal setting for 2026 and how you can use seasons, systems, and habits to your advantage when you're trying to achieve your goals. So I talked a little bit about my own personal goals on the last podcast, but I'm going to go through those in much more detail again, not because I love to talk about myself. Well, I kind of do, but not more than I love to help you guys. But it's more so that I can use my goal setting process as sort of a template and a prototype for those of you who are looking for your own way to create your own processes, right? So I want to jump into that today, and I felt as though this was an appropriate topic to discuss because we're still at the very top of the year. Today, for me, is Sunday, January 11th. So I'm hoping that we still have, and I know that English. We still have plenty of time to set our goals for the year and really start putting our systems in place and our habits in place to make those happen. So let's just jump right into it. All right. So again, there are several things that I want to get done this year. And as I'm sure you can tell because of my intro, for me, those goals break down into four primary categories. That would be storytelling, right? I'm a novelist, I'm a screenwriter, so that's important. Game design and game development, full stack engineering, and then growing my tech company as a tech founder. So for my storytelling goals, you guys know I'm a novelist of sci-fi, dystopian, and thriller, and a combination of those things. And my goal for this year in that particular role is to publish at least 3 books. Sodom, book 1 in the Sodom series, and then Fraternity and Hollow Point, which are books 4 and 5, respectively, in the Books of Ezekiel series, which is urban fantasy, dystopian series, my first series, my flagship series, right? And so in addition to that, of course, as you are writing, you're always going to have all these other different ideas. So one of my other goals that are sort of attached to these goals is to build out more of the Sodom world and universe. Then I also want to rebuild the foundation of the Books of Ezekiel series. But now that I've been writing for a while and now that I've done other series, I actually have templates that I personally prefer to use. And so now I want to go back to the Books of Ezekiel series and organize this mass of information, this wealth of information into certain folders, certain templates, certain spreadsheets and worksheets, just so that I can have a working wiki, right, for that particular series. So that's sort of a larger goal. It doesn't have to happen all this year, but it's going to happen bit by bit, especially on those times when I need a little bit of downtime from the drafting. And then a stretch goal for this year in the storytelling role is to publish one more book, which is going to be book 2 of the Sodom series called Solarium. That's a stretch goal. I don't have to go for that goal, but it's there. Okay, game design. Goals for that. Release my first Roblox game MVP. Very important. It's something that I really want to do this year. That's what I'm working on. A second goal in that role is going to be me releasing at least one upgrade and or one new version of the MVP. So, the MVP is the smallest, most functional prototype. And obviously I want to build on that going forward. So that's another goal in the game design role. Full stack engineering, finishing my first certificate in full stack development, which would be the scripted and compiled programming languages certificate at University of Phoenix, which I'm already enrolled in, I'm already doing. And then by the end of the year, I also want to complete my full stack developer certification at freecodecamp.org. All right, I put that resource in the description below again because I think they're phenomenal. They're amazing. I love it. And I know you're going to love it too. And then I also want to practice consistently and build a really amazing programming portfolio on GitHub. I was gonna call it Gut Hub. Slow down, Colby. Relax. On GitHub and my website as I go through both programs. And as a tech founder, I want to release versions 3 through 7 of the God Tier Storytelling Writer Studio app. But one big goal that I want to talk about too is the goal of just like personhood altogether, right? And when I say personhood, I mean just like remembering at the end of the day that I'm not just like all these different roles, right? Yes, I am a game designer. I am aspiring to be an engineer. I am a storyteller and writer. I am a mom. I am all these things, but I'm also just me. I'm also just a person. And taking care of my body, my heart, my soul, my mental is really important. And I really want to submit to you that that is your first goal in 2026, regardless of your other goals, right? So for me, my personhood goals would include prioritizing getting more sleep. I have been notoriously awful at getting sleep. I am an early bird by nature. That is just what I love. I love getting up early in the morning, but sometimes my brain is so on and so excited and absorbing so much and doing so much that it's very hard for me to turn my brain off. And so recently, and I mean in the past couple of weeks, I have made a significant effort to get more sleep, getting to bed earlier, for example, powering down electronics as soon as I can, if I can, right? And then also, just a side note, empowering my own child to be more independent because unlike me, she is a night owl. I am an early bird. So for a long time, I felt like I had to stay up. And, as a parent, up until a certain age, you should be staying up to make sure that your child is asleep before you go to bed. Because, child, once you go to sleep, you don't know what's going to happen if they're still awake. So for a long time, admittedly, motherhood has really messed up my sleep schedule big time, especially because my daughter is very different than I am. But now that she's older and she's able to manage a lot on her own, I say, hey, like bedtime is this time. You know what I'm saying? For me, I'm gonna give you an extra hour. But when that hour is over, you need to be honest, be forthcoming, and be responsible. Power your stuff down, unplug it, put on, brush your teeth, do all that, go to bed. And I would say like for the first month or two, I would stay up to like work with her through that. And then like she's doing it all on her own, right? She has her own goals and her own personhood goals and her own, you know, life goals that she wants to achieve. And so it's helpful for me to keep putting those goals in front of her to let her know that like if you want to achieve this like you say you do, then you need to start being more responsible, and it's really helpful. So I call this the single mom singularity. We're going to have a whole mini series on the single mom singularity and like how to get your children in order and together so that you can have a life that is fulfilling for you while you're also being a wonderful parent. But that's a whole separate series. We'll get into that. Bottom line is that those are the many steps I took to prioritize sleep, and I'm going to continue to prioritize that going forward. I'm also prioritizing more water. I've also been notoriously horrible at drinking water, which is not good. And it's not just an aesthetic thing like for your skin, it's also for like your cardiovascular system, your digestion. Like you just need to have enough water. So, what I have done is that I have gotten these super cute, I love these Sanrio like Stanley cups. I don't want to call them Stanley Cups because I don't want to feel like I'm riding the trend and the train, but like I guess I kind of am. But anyway, these Hello Kitty Sanrio Stanley Cups are great. They're about 32 ounces, and I just take one and I just like sip all day, every day. Okay, and that's really been helping me to get at minimum 40 ounces, which is still nowhere near where I need to be. I want to be more towards like 60 or 90 per day because I also work out. But it's way better than what I was at like a month ago, a year ago. Like it was bad. And I'm seeing the difference in everything that I do. So I'm prioritizing that. I'm going to continue to exercise, lift weights, and just up my game. So I've been, thankfully, consistently going to the gym since this past April of last year, 2025. And yes, I am seeing the results. I love it. Okay, your girl is coming back after over a decade of like not being where I want to be. In terms of like fitness and like health or what have you, like for the past year and a half, I really have been working very hard on that, and I'm going to continue to do that. And it's great to that it's become a part of my identity, right? And we'll talk about identity shifts in the future in a future podcast as well. Just stay tuned. Okay. Listening to my body is another personhood goal that I have, right? So that means if I'm tired, I'm injured, I'm sick, or I'm just physically unwell in any way, shape, or form, I am going to rest no matter what is happening. If that means taking a day off work, if that means I don't write or dev or study that day, then that's just what it is. Okay? Because I can't do anything if my health is not on point. And so I want you to do the best that you can to make sure that you're listening to your body as well. I also have a goal to rest my mind. This is something that I didn't realize I needed to do, but your mind is a part of your body. But sometimes resting your body looks very different than resting your mind. And again, that's for a future podcast episode as to what the differences are and how to manage both. But for me, I have a tendency to get overstimulated. Where people think about it like an Olympian, right? They might not always like training, but you've got to be super passionate and disciplined and dedicated to what it is you do, where you're literally working 6 to 10 hours a day every day on your skills as an Olympian, as a swimmer, as a track star, as a whatever, right? For me, the mental and in an intellectual road is my personal Olympics. I consider myself like an intellectual Olympian. That doesn't mean that I'm superior to anyone. I just consider myself someone who is in the intellectual and mental gym, literally from like 5:30 in the morning all the way until 8:30 at night. I love to learn. I love to explore. I love to research. I love to practice. I love to execute. That is what I do all day, every day, in everything that I do, right? And so, because I consider myself like an intellectual Olympian, like always in training, my brain is always in training. Even the things that I do to relax tend to be things that sharpen my skills at the same time, right? So, I love logic puzzles. I love word puzzles. I love, logic and word games, and on occasion, like some math games if I can really get them, together. But those are the things I really enjoy doing. If it's not stimulating me intellectually, it's very hard for me to be invested in it. You know what I'm saying? So it's great on one end, but on the other end, that means that I have to, just like an actual athlete, right, who works their body, works out and has to cool down and like take their ice baths and like stretch and sleep and fuel. I have to do the same thing for my brain. If I don't do things to actually shut my brain off or to like give my brain its ice bath every day, I literally start to misfire. And when I mean, like, it gets kind of crazy, like literally ticks, twitching. I mean, I'm getting kind of vulnerable here, right? But like I will start to misfire because I'm just doing way too much. And I can feel when the switch is coming, when my brain is literally burnt out and hot and tired and just needs to like decompress. So I go analog usually at that time. I disconnect from my devices, I journal, I write, and I watch something really soothing or I meditate. Those are the different ways that I relax my brain. But that is something that like I just want to tell you guys that you need to do. If you're kind of like me, right, and you're always thinking, always analyzing, always processing, always, you have to find a way to unplug and give your brain its ice bath, or you will burn out. You will short circuit. It's not fun either, because mental illness is a real thing. Wanting to cook and bake more this year. but joyfully. There's a whole story behind this and behind why personally I used to love cooking and baking and gourmet. Like literally, like my entire life, I loved doing it. I thought I was going to be a chef one day. And then something happened, which I won't get into on this podcast, it's very personal, that made me not like it. Like I got completely disconnected in my soul from cooking and from baking, right? Even certain things or that people would say or certain words would like completely trigger me and like disconnect me entirely from that side. But now that I'm healed and I'm better, and I've gotten over, that really horrible situation that made me disconnect from cooking and baking, I'm getting more into it. So this year, um, I last year I was doing more like gourmet stews and homemade soups and stuff like that. This year I'm gonna focus on breads, right? And like bready things. So like banana breads and just homemade sourdoughs and just stuff like that, right? I'm not even like a huge carbs person, but it's like I just using your hands and kneading some dough and like doing different things with it just sounds great and cool. I don't know. I'm just into it. So we'll see how that goes. Enjoying hobbies more is another personhood thing that I want to do. Just, I have a lot of hobbies. Again, brain never turns off, interest never really turned off. But in terms of enjoying hobbies more, it's not a goal oriented thing. It's just more so like just to relax. Painting, drawing, manga, both drawing it and reading more books in general, but for leisure, I'd like to read minimum 10 books a year, including audiobooks. For those of you who are a little bit like, I don't know, gatekeepy around what reading actually means, please go work that out because for me, without having audiobooks, I wouldn't really be able to absorb much throughout the year because I'm so busy working and writing and processing and coding and doing all these other things. So for me, reading is all encompassing. Yes, I do still read traditionally, but I also listen to a lot of audiobooks and I also enjoy that as well. So that's what I mean by reading more. I guess reading and absorbing more. I'm also into like casual fashion design. I have a sewing machine and a sewing desk that I, really want to bring back out of retirement because I actually enjoy doing that stuff. And then I also have like an acoustic and electric guitar that I used to play, but I don't play as much anymore. And I have a keyboard that I also used to play, but I don't play as much anymore. So just trying to like dust those things off just casually in order to get more into the hobby space. And to kind of support that, I'm going to be doing, and I say thank you to Cozy K, who's an amazing influencer. You should check her out, Cozy K. She does a lot of cozy content, right? Cozy gaming, cozy hobbies, just cozy lifestyle. It's wonderful. And she's great. And she brought up in her 2026 kickoff that she was going to be doing more creative retreats, right? Which I really loved the idea of, especially because this year for me, I usually travel a few times every year, but this year I will not be traveling. I'm going to actually stay close to home for the majority of the year, but it doesn't mean that I can't have my own creative staycation or creative retreat while I'm home. So this is a great year to try that out and see if I can't dust off that electric guitar or that, keyboard or my paints. I have like acrylics, I have glitter paints, I have oil paints, I have just watercolors, that I also used to use a lot and just enjoying those hobbies more. All right. So that was a good 20 minutes of me fleshing out my goals. Let's talk about how I'm going to use seasons, systems, and habits to achieve those goals as best as I can, right? And again, these are goals, these are not obligations. I just want to put that out there before we even start. Goals, not obligations. So let's talk about using seasons to achieve your goals. Personally, when I think of seasons, when most of us think of seasons, we think of, summer, fall, winter, spring, right? And roughly our fiscal year is divided into those four categories. Not as neatly as I would like, but they are divided relatively equally, right? But for me, I go by quarter. So Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. Basically, a 3-month division across the entire year. And for the first quarter of every year, I treat that quarter as the habit building, tracking, and tweaking season, if that makes sense, right? And just for your reference, like Q2 is growth and building, Q3 is exponential or exponentiating your progress, and then Q4 is what I call the final flourish and winter lock in. The winter lock in is something that you guys hear about often, pretty much once a year, but it's true. People usually do lock in for the winter. I lock in, and that's become a part of the seasonal theme that I use for my own productivity. But for Q1 specifically, you really want to focus on building those habits, then tracking, and then tweaking those habits. Why is that? Because when you're starting anything new at the top of the year, you don't always know whether or not you are going to be able to keep up the habit that you put in place, right? First of all, you have to decide on what habits are going to create the outcomes that you're looking for. Then you have to make sure your habits have a slot every day or every week or what have you, so that you are consistently approaching your goals and your milestones. But then you don't even know if those habits are going to stick or that they're going to be impactful, right? So you always have to track your habits and then tweak your habits. All right. So the question that you need to be asking yourself at the top of any year, this year in particular, is what habits do I need to develop on a daily basis in order to achieve my goals for 2026 or this year? So that's the first step. Answer that question. List out your goals, right? And then under each goal, write out one habit that you need to develop or you need to hit on a day-to-day basis in order to achieve that goal. For me, you guys already heard my massive list of goals. So I took my list of goals and I developed, or I established, let's put it that way, a habit, right, in order to achieve each goal. So in order for me to write and publish a book, not all 3, not all 4 books, a book, I need to be writing pretty much every single day, touching words. I don't care if it's 50 words, 100 words, 1,000 words, 5,000 words. I need to be writing every single day. So that is a habit I have to form, writing every single day. I want to make sure that I am healthy and fit, right? So that means I have a gym in my complex, luckily, right? So I should be going to the gym minimum 3 to 4 times a week. I prefer 4 times a week, but at very minimum 3 times a week. I also said I wanted to become a full stack engineer. I need to be studying or coding 5 times a week. That's just my opinion. You might have a different opinion. I want to design and release my own game. I should be touching or designing code 4 to 5 times a week. That's a habit I need to have in order to design and release my own game. And then also, I want to design and release the next version of my app, which means I should also be touching or designing code for that goal 4 to 5 times a week. Now, if your head is spinning and is about to explode, never you fear, okay? Because I too, at the end of last year, was looking at the things I wanted to do this year and asking myself, how the heck am I going to engage in these 5 habits every single day or every other day? How? And one thing that I did have to do is kill my darlings. Well, let's not put it that way. That's a little bit morbid and sad. I had to reschedule one of my darlings, okay? Because realistically, just looking over the course of an 8-hour day at work and then maybe 2 hours prior to work and then 2 hours after, so that's what, a 12-hour day, that's really stretching the limit, right? That's a 60 hours a week for everything and anything. And I really need to make sure I'm taking care of myself, right? So I had to look and say, okay, which are the highest leverage things that I need to do in order to achieve my goals, which can be done now, which can be rescheduled for later. And so what I decided is that the season, in addition to this being the habit forming season, in terms of designing and coding either my game or my app, I had to choose between those two, and I chose to design my game for the first quarter of the year. How did I make this decision and why? How? Number one, when I established my tech company last year, I established it in August of 2025, which means that I spent roughly August, September, October, and I would say a good half of November, to be very fair, which was like 3.5 months, really going in and going hard on developing God tier storytelling, the writing studio, the ecosystem, the business plan, the app, all those things. I went crazy, and that was really the only kind of design that I was doing from mid-August up to mid-November in 2025. Then from mid-November to the end of December, I took some time to relax, to breathe, to take a break, enjoy the holidays, enjoy my family. Personhood is very important, right? And then when I had that space to breathe, I was able to use the rest of the year to figure out what I wanted to do next year. So in 2025, I gave God tier storytelling a really strong focus, right? Unilateral focus, single-minded focus. So when it was time for me to sit down and decide, should I do God tier storytelling or my Roblox game, it was already easy to decide on the Roblox game because I had not done that much development on the game yet. I wanted to kick the year off with something low stakes and fun, right? And relaxing, because I do find game design to be relatively relaxing. I love creating things. It's very relaxing. And now the Roblox game is going to get the single-minded unilateral focus for this first quarter that God tier storytelling got last quarter. Okay. And that is how I made my decision. What am I most interested in? What do I find most exciting and most engaging? And also, what did I work on last time? And what needs more love this time? So that's how I made my decision. And because I decided that way, that this season was about game development, then I can say, okay, I have 12 to 13 weeks to create an MVP for Roblox. And that actually is a significant amount of time if you are focusing solely on that. You can develop an MVP in 12 weeks, right? Some kind of MVP. Then at the end of that 12 weeks, 13 weeks when I ship, we're going into Q2. Now I'm going back to God tier storytelling. I released 2 versions of the app last year. Now it's time to work on version 3, version 4 for the next 12 to 13 weeks. That's also doable, right? So Q1 is the Roblox game. Q2 is God tier storytelling. Q3 will probably be the Roblox upgrade and the new version. And then the final lock-in, sort of winter final flourish, is going to be me focusing on the next 2 to 3 versions of God tier storytelling. So that's how I broke this down in order to make sure that both of my development endeavors are getting the same amount of love this year, but are also getting the ultimate level of focus so that I can build momentum and avoid context switching. Context switching will destroy your progress. I think we can have a whole podcast on like the science of context switching and why switching different tasks is really damaging to your actual progress and productivity because you have to build momentum. It's kind of like you running a triathlon or doing like a triathlon, right? You run for a certain amount, you bike for a certain amount, and then you do the final event for a certain amount of time and a certain distance. Can you imagine if somebody was asking you to like run for a mile, then bike for a mile, and then swim for a mile or whatever the case is, and then you're just rotating through that for like 30 miles? That's insanity to me. You're not really able to develop any momentum or any rhythm, right? Or hit a stride or figure out like, some kind of plateau that makes sense for you, that's sustainable, if you have to keep switching your event, right? So development and work, whenever you're working on something, kind of follows the same structure. You need to be able to be at it for a certain amount of time in order to gain momentum and hit a certain milestone. So for me, I guess this is, my version of a design and development biathlon, right? So we have one long stretch with gaming, another long stretch of software development, then gaming and development, and then software development. Okay, so now that we have our seasons together and we've chosen our seasons for certain things, let's talk about how we will take our daily habits for our specific goals, and we're going to work those into a daily system. So, for the most part, without even thinking about it, if you have anything going on in your life at all, your day-to-day system is basically your daily schedule. Especially if you work 9 to 5, or you go to school, or you work and you go to school, whatever the case is, you have a system that's already in place. Is it maximized for you to get your goals done? I don't know. You have to sit down and really look at what you're doing hour by hour, minute by minute, to really see if you are optimized for success. For me, I have a particular system that pretty much starts at 5:30 and on good days ends at 9:30, but I've had to also tweak that. We'll talk about that in a second because again, this is the season of habit forming, tracking, and tweaking, but we'll get to tweaking in a second. So here is my system. I use my day's natural rhythms and responsibilities and constraints to enforce my daily habits. So like I said earlier in the podcast, I'm an early riser, right? And so I wake up sort of naturally around 5:30 in the morning. Love it. It's quiet. The world is very silent and still. So I wake up, and that is the time from 5:30 to 5:50 that I'm first of all got to go, visit. Nature calls at that time in the morning, so you go and you handle your business. Then I get on my gym clothes, right? I literally put clothes on that I know I'm going to have to I'm going to need like later in the morning, right? And then I just sit at my computer and open my Scrivener software or whatever it is I'm trying to do. So I am still like a little groggy to a certain extent. I don't wake up just like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, but like I'm getting there. By the time 5:50 hits, I'm ready. I'm awake. I'm ready to work on something, write on something. So usually I start writing in the morning. Okay. Sometimes it's all Sodom. Sometimes it's all fraternity, or sometimes it's a little bit of both. Or sometimes if my brain is like not on for whatever reason, I will actually start to world build, which is always fun and always kind of gets my juices flowing. And then I'll start drafting. Right? So I do that for about an hour, 5:50 to 6:50. Then from 6:50 to 7:30, I have to put that stuff aside. And now it's time to get my kid off and ready to school. So for the next 40 minutes, I'm getting her up. She manages, again, her own morning routine, brushing teeth, getting, facial care, getting clothes on, all that stuff. And in the meantime, I am making sure that lunch is made because I have to make lunch for her. Breakfast is together. Vitamins are on the table. Any sort of last final things, just making sure any administrative things are handled that I might have forgotten the night before. I try not to, but it happens. And for those 40 minutes, it's really about her and getting her out the door and getting her ready for a great day at school. I already have my gym clothes on when I bring her downstairs for her to be picked up to go to school. My gym is literally right across the street, which I'm very lucky to have. So at 7:30, dropping her off to her pickup. And then from 7:40 to 8:25, I'm in the gym. So it's a straight 45 minutes, sometimes an hour, if I have some flexibility, of just me working out. I already have my workout plan planned out because at this point, now that I've been exercising nearly a year, I sort of know what works for me, what works for my body. So I'll usually hit cardio first, and then I'll lift. Most people prefer to lift first and then do cardio. I can't do that. I need my whole body to be awake and, ready and like, just on point. And cardio does that for me. So I'll do cardio and then I'll work on two muscle groups and then I'll do some, sort of low to medium resistance core work, right? And that's my schedule. So that's about 45 minutes, sometimes 50, sometimes an hour if I can squeeze it in, or if I get there a little earlier. And then I get back at 8:30. From 8:30 to 9:30, it's all about self-care, hygiene, hit the shower, get my, do my facial care. Shout out to Medicube Glass Skincare. Okay, it has me out here looking like, just amazing. But that is something that's very important to me, just generally, like as a way to get my mind right, my body right, and just my spirit right for the rest of the day. My dad always says, I'm going to get mine before the company gets theirs, right? And I think that that's a very healthy perspective to have. It's like from 5:30 to 9:30, it's all about Kobe and kid, Kobe and kid, right? But I have at least had 4 hours, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, and also very lucky. I've had 4 hours of me being able to write, exercise, and take care of my body. Again, take care of my hygiene, take care of my aesthetics, take care of like my skin, things of that nature. And then from 9:30 to 5:30, I'm hitting work, right? And of course, I personally, because I am lucky and blessed enough at this point in time to work from home, I am able to take lunch and breakfast and like snacks pretty much like throughout the day very flexibly. But I tend to work through those times, not because I'm a workaholic, but because I just want to make sure I'm being super efficient. So I don't mind eating a salad while being in a meeting, right? I can double and multitask. I can eat a burrito while reviewing a tool simulation that I have to edit and design, right? So those are things that I have flexibility on. So I'm able to weave in my nutrition and my self-care like throughout the day without sacrificing my responsibilities at work, which are, first and foremost, and because it keeps a roof over my head and keeps me and my child fed. And so we have to be responsible and do what we have to do. Then when 5:30 hits, right? We're dealing now with like the afternoon, really the evening routine. So again, this is a segment for the single mom singularity, but my daughter is very independent. And I have done a lot of work to make sure, and so has she. She wants to be independent, to make sure that she comes in and she manages her own time and her own schedule. Like she'll come in, and she'll get herself a snack. She'll take 30 minutes just to decompress, relax, play her game, whatever. And then, from a certain time to a certain time, she's doing her homework. She's self-managing. She's making sure that she's holding herself accountable. She's keeping track of her homework assignments, online and also in her journal. Like she's doing what she has to do. And I'm going to talk more about how, if you're a single parent or if you're not a single parent, how to get your kid to the point where they are taking responsibility for their own lives and their own responsibilities, right? But she's doing that, so then I can focus on adult things like getting dinner on the table and other things that she might need help with, signing permission slips, things of that nature. This is the time that we just slow down, we decompress from both of our days, finish up our responsibilities, and then from like 5:30 to 6 or 5:30 to 6:30, it's family time, it's us decompressing, it's us, doing what we have to do and eating dinner. Once that's pretty much said and done, again, she's more independent. So then that gives me some flexibility for me to apply another 2.5 to 3, sometimes even 3.5 hours to my other endeavors, which include studying for my certificate program and actually coding for that program, and also doing some development work, game development specifically for the Roblox Mermaid game. As of April 1st of this year, that game development slot is going to switch over into the software development slot for God tier storytelling. Right? So you see, realistically, I have about 3, maybe 4 hours every night, if I can squeeze it out of my day, to really work on studying and designing. But then at the end of that, around 9 o'clock, 9:30 is when I really have to shut down because my body is telling me, hey, sis, you've been up since 5:30 in the morning. You're doing a lot. You need your 8 hours of sleep, which you're still working on. And I am still working on it. But it is now time to shut it down and get yourself together, get in the bed and do what you have to do. All right. And again, coming in clutch at the end of the day, my daughter is also handling her own night routine. Like she is very self-sufficient. And so that is a huge part of like as a single mom, right? In the single mom singularity, so to speak, how to create a system at home that really helps the systems, the other systems that I have to juggle to work. And it's good for everyone because it is teaching my child how to be self sufficient, how to be responsible, and how to be accountable because she's getting older and she has, like I said, specific goals that she wants to achieve that are going to require that she is able to manage herself, her time, and her accountability. That's my schedule. Now, is the schedule perfect? No, because sometimes your girl just doesn't feel like it. Okay. Even though, like, I love my schedule, I love what I do, I enjoy everything that I do. Sometimes I'm just like, bruh, I want to just lay here and listen to some music. And that is okay. That is okay. I have scheduled some breaks in the week for that. But even if I haven't scheduled a break, I have to listen to my body, prioritize my body and my mental health and my mental situation and say, you know what? Today's not really the day to push it. Today is the day to relax and chill out. And usually, to be very honest, that happens on the weekend, on Saturday. And so as a result, I don't really make many plans for Saturdays because I already know I'm going to be wiped from the week. I'm going to be pretty exhausted. I'm going to just be bumping around. I'm going to want to sleep in late or not. I don't really ever sleep in late, but I'm going to be in bed late just scrolling. I'm going to be looking for the newest movie or the newest TV series. I'm going to be catching up with maybe a friend on the phone or not, and just laying about, hanging out, me and my kid, doing something cool like ramen night or popcorn day or something like that, and just vegging out. That's mostly what I do on a Saturday for most of the day until I feel like my tank is full again. And then I will get up and do some like development work, some studying, things of that nature. And then on Sunday, that's when I have more of my energy back. So I'll do like, if I have to, like meal prepping, laundry, chores. And I'm going to actually get better at that. I'm going to tell you in a second what my plan is. But because I just want to like reserve my Sunday less for administrative chore stuff and more for like actual development. But I'll usually like get myself back together on Sunday when I've taken Saturday to rest and decompress. And then I'll do what I have to do, including this podcast, which is what I'm actually filming today, Sunday. So I'll do all of that. Well, a great thing about my structure, and this is actually getting more into tweaking because you heard the habit forming and the tracking, right? Now we're tweaking, is that when I'm tired, even when I'm tired, something that I truly and genuinely enjoy doing is writing. Just no matter how tired my body is or my brain is, I genuinely feel, for me, that writing is a release valve for me. So when I don't feel like deving, I don't feel like studying, I'm too tired to do laundry, and I'm like, oh my God, I feel so pent up. I just need to release and relax. Writing is how I do that. And it's just lucky for me that the one of my goals is to publish the very novel that I work on when I'm feeling like I need a pressure valve or like a release. So it kind of all works for me, even to a certain degree. My decompression still contributes to my productivity, but I don't want you to feel as though you have to be productive even when you're decompressing. You don't. Okay? I don't care if you're just sitting there and staring at the wall all day like a vegetable, like this. Okay? If you need to do that to feel relaxed and to release that stress, please go and do that. Okay? So let's talk about really quickly the tweaking aspect because I touched on it just now. But one big thing that I did, oh, one big thing that I did notice this week when I was executing my schedule is that instead of me being able to stay up until 9:30, my body is actually tapping me on the shoulder at like 8:30 and saying, "Hey sis, nope, it's time for bed. You're tired. Like let's do this." And I've had to obey because my first rule, right, my first law is that I'm going to listen to my body and listen to what its needs are. And so um, I've had to shave an hour off my day. And I'm doing the calculations, I'm I'm running the math and I'm just like, man, that's 5 hours a week lost. Oh my gosh, that's 20 to 25 hours a month lost. Oh my gosh, that's 240 to 300 hours lost in the year by just shaving off that 1 hour. But that's okay because even though I'm not using that 250 hours to work on something as much as I would love to, that's 250 hours of extra sleep that I'm getting that I did not get for almost the past decade. That's a win, y'all. Okay. And so I just want to put that out there. Sometimes you do have to tweak, sometimes you're not going to get everything done, and that's okay. What that means is that if I have to put in, an extra hour or two on Sundays, then I'll do that. And how you then tweak that is that you look at um, your unstructured time. And for me, weekends are unstructured time. It's whatever it is I want to do. Usually what I want to do is develop games and stuff like that, but it's unstructured, right? So I don't have a schedule. But figure out how you can make your unstructured time even more impactful and even outsourced, to be honest, right? So there are a couple of things that I do end up outsourcing, and that includes my grocery shopping. I no longer do that. I don't like it as a general rule, and I'm very, very happy with Instacart, and I am very, very happy and pleased to tip well. Okay, so I appreciate the service. I show my appreciation financially, and of course through my courtesy, and it works for me. I always get great service. I love it. Another way that I get my time back, or rather that I used to use to get my time back, was just hiring housekeeping services, right? And I used to do that all the time. I stopped doing it mostly because I moved, and I'm still in many ways trying to get my place exactly the way I want it. Because when I invite someone in to clean, I just want them to be able to do like a simple deep cleaning. I don't want them to have to figure out like, where do I move this box, or this bin is here, do you want me to put it there? Like, I want to have everything in its place so that when somebody comes in and cleans, I can tell them this goes there, that goes there, and there's no confusion. Right now I'm still trying to like get more settled, and I'm also kind of, I don't, not kind of, but just decluttering, right? And going a lot more minimalist. And so I want to finish that process before I get somebody else in here. So hopefully in the next month or so, I will have less to do when I'm able to get someone in to help out. Because now I have to declutter and I have to clean at the same time. And so obviously it takes a lot of time. And if you're wondering where I'm getting all this time, again, you know, it's a whole thing. Like it's a whole, like, me just having to move things around and choosing times of focus, right, in order to get things done, because dinner has to be cooked, food has to be prepped, laundry has to be done, house has to be cleaned. But even in that instance, right, I can still see ways in which my systems at present can be improved, right? And so I'm going to give you guys an update as to how I'm going to further improve my systems by outsourcing those things that I know can be outsourced and are not necessarily things that I want to do, want to make time for, or that I necessarily enjoy. So that's for that. But this schedule that I just showed you and these systems and the season thinking, this is for me a really strong start. And I feel very grounded and very happy in what I'm doing. But as I continue to live life and allow life to happen, I'm going to continue to have to tweak. And so feel free to borrow from any parts of what I have discussed today in order to better set up and optimize your life and your schedule for your creative dreams. But then always know that you are going to continue to track what works and what doesn't. You're going to continue to tweak, and that's totally normal. But the biggest thing, the main game, is your self-care and your wellness and your fitness and whatever it is you have to do in order to make sure your body, your mind, and your soul are lush, are flourishing, are full, are complete, so that you can continue on being the best that you can be for yourself. Okay, because if you just don't have your health, you don't have anything. And I unfortunately had to learn that the hard way a little less than 2 years ago. And that's a different story for a different podcast. But I just want to tell you, as somebody who has been there and done that, please put your health first. And if that is your only goal for 2026, that is really the best goal you could ever have. Before we sign off, I'm going to do the da 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 da, the scrum solo. Da 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 da. All right, so here is my scrum solo, my roundup from this past week. So the review, I made some great progress. I was able to live stream daily, which wasn't even on my list of things to do, but basically whenever I sat down to study, to code, to write, to develop my Roblox game, I just turned it into a study with me sort of live stream session. And I was able to gather a lot of data from that, actually, in terms of like what people actually are interested in, what they're looking at, things of that nature. So I'm not going to do anything with that data as per yet, or as for now, but we'll see. I also was able to write 2,000 plus words this week, which is in many ways an accomplishment, but also something I do need to improve on, because 500 of those words, excuse me, 400 plus of those words were for Sodom Book 1. About 100 of those words were for Fraternity, which is book 4 in the Books of Ezekiel series. But then about 14 to 1,500 of those words were for Sodom Book 2. And while that's really important, right, and I'm not going to criticize myself for working on any part of the Sodom franchise, I really do want to focus on book 1, because that is the goal. That's the primary goal for this year, right? Is to get book 1 out and off the press. So I'm going to try to move as many of those words into the Sodom book 1 category as humanly possible this coming week. And I built and I developed consistently. So whether that was me working on my Mermaid Roblox game, or that was me learning more about Python through my class, through my object-oriented programming class, I touched code and developed and built, and I wrote a few programs in addition to doing some game design work. So I'm really proud of my progress, and it's not as much as I would have wanted to get done this past week. No shade to myself, but I have to make room for the fact that, yes, I did. I was under the weather, and that is important to put myself first. All right, the retro. What slept? Like I said, I developed all projects this week. I touched on all of my projects relatively consistently this week. Even on days where I couldn't touch certain things, I touched other things, like I coded or I developed on days that I couldn't write, and vice versa. What crashed? I did. Like I said, I got sick and I had to adjust. The thing that I'm most proud of with regard to that is that I did not push through my illness. I took Wednesday and Thursday pretty much off in terms of doing anything outside of my day-to-day 9 to 5 job. And I really just took some time to recuperate, rest, and get back on my feet. So what are the plans for this coming week, right? From 1/12 to 1/19. Number one, my goal is to approve all the tech design docs for my Roblox game. That is a goal that I wanted to complete this week. I was not able to. Again, I got 2 to 2.5 days shaved off of my schedule, but I'm hoping that this coming week I'll be able to meet that milestone. Number two, I want to finish week 2 of the object-oriented programming class that I'm taking at UOPX. And a sort of sub goal of that is that I would like to be able to pace myself better. Again, got behind because I missed those 2.5 days. I'm hoping that I can actually set a cadence that makes sense and feels manageable this week. And then the plan for Sodom for this week is less building, more drafting. I did draft. I did actually write words, but I also developed Sodom's sports culture and sports teams and sports leagues, which on the surface might not seem like a huge deal, but when you're writing in a dystopian universe, yeah, sports can do a whole lot for you. And I'm going to have a whole separate walkthrough and podcast on how to use certain meso institutions like sports leagues and stuff like that to really make the world breathe and make it come alive. But that's not for today. But I want to do a little bit less building on that next week, more drafting. But it doesn't mean I'm not going to work on building at all. So just FYI. All right, the scrum. So what were my constraints this week? Aside from the illness, I noticed in my first week of habit building that I was getting tired and wanting to just wrap everything up and turn in at around 8:30. So my solution is to not push through, but to listen to my body, right? I'm going to adjust. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go mobile at 8:30 p.m. and just try to draft a little bit in bed until I fall asleep. That's my plan. I'm not going to force myself to stay up. I'm not going to force anything. I'm just going to say, okay, 8:30 is the cutoff time. Let's move everything from the desk to the bed and fall asleep. And I'll probably be asleep by 9 o'clock, 9:30, to be very honest. But I'm going to try to get a teeny bit of writing done in bed if I can. And if not, I'm just going to hit the sack at 8:30 and call it a day and readjust for next week. And since I will be trying to move my writing to a mobile sort of cadence, right, in the evening, and then the mornings I'm going to try to reserve for my object-oriented programming class, because that's really when my brain is like the freshest and ready to absorb information. So I actually might switch up my writing schedule and take the writing out of the top of the day, put it in the lunch hour or at the evening, and then study time will go at the top of my day every day. That's what I'm thinking about doing. So putting study time at the top of the day and then putting it on the weekends as well. So we'll see what happens. Okay, those are my plans. I'll report back next week. And then finally, now that we have done the review, retro plan, scrum, now we are going to sprint. It's time to take off, y'all. So I'm going to leave you guys with this beautiful quote that is extremely important. It's self-care means giving yourself permission to pause by Cecilia Tran. And that is something that I had to remind myself of this week. That is something that I'm proud to say that I honored for myself this week. I put myself first and I was able to get through the week. I feel way better, okay? I presume I will continue to feel better, knock on wood. And it's really because I did not try to push myself beyond my physical limits and I honored what my body was telling me. So I want to leave you with that as you guys go and try to set goals and achieve your goals for 2026. Honor yourself, your self-care, your wellness, and your body. So there you have it, folks. Wishing you sable and stardust as we surf the singularity together. This is Kobe R. Rice, logging off for now. Bye.